What I do like to do is to develop and to research and study autonomous agents, autonomous intelligent agents. Now, when I'm talking about agents, I'm not talking about CIA agents, FBI agents. I'm talking about intelligent systems, intelligent computer systems that are autonomous, know how to plan, adaptive, able to learn. Especially, I'm interested in those that can cooperate with other agents and with people and can face adversary. What things these agents, intelligent, these computer systems that interact well with people can do? So they can support people, they can replace people, and they can also be used for training people. Let's give some example of systems, agents that I built. First, let's talk about supporting people. So I was involved in a system that's running in LAX, in Los Angeles Airport, since 2007, which helps the security people in LAX to set randomized checkpoints. If you've been there, you probably saw the result of our system. And more recently, we have now a system that is on trial by the Israeli police in order to decide where randomized to locate cruisers, police cars, in order to reduce car accidents. Another example of a system that supports people, we had a project with General Motors where the system helps drivers in electronic cars to set the climate control system in a way that will save energy, but they will be happy with the driving. And now we are moving forward to autonomous cars. The interaction, the agent helps the autonomous car understand the customer, the passenger, in order to, when I'm in the car and I'm telling my husband, drive carefully. He knows what I mean. The question is, will the autonomous car, the driverless car, will understand what I have in mind? Another recent system of agent of one of my students, Akiva, it's giving advice to people about who to approach on a dating site, taking into account both sides, the reciprocal recommendation. Well, he thought it will help him in dating, but for him it didn't help, but he got 2 papers out of it. And probably one of the projects that I like most was funded by Intel about developing an agent that whispers in the ear of someone that doing a negotiation, argumentation, giving the person good arguments to the discussion. And really, I want to convince, that's only what I want in life, to convince my son to stop using his smartphone and go play outside. Even with my agent, I'm not successful. Okay, so these were systems that help people, but we also have systems that replace people. If we are talking about argumentation, so we had another next step of a system that tries to convince people of something. So we decided to convince people to change their mind on whether they want to eat. So 2 weeks in advance, they were asked, you'll come to the lab, you'll need to choose between a cake and some healthy, maybe not that healthy, bar. And the person that wanted the cake, the system tries to convince him to take, or her, to take the bar, and the other way around. And the system was better than humans. I mean, changing humans' opinion, that's what I found out. I don't understand in people, so I just understand in computer systems. So I didn't know how difficult it to convince people to change their mind, but at least my system did better than humans. Another example is a system that is still running. We did it with Shiba, which I called automated speech therapist that help in rehabilitation of people with brain damage, and they can do it at home, and the system gives them advice and training them in speech. And how I know it's useful, because Kupat Cholim is giving Tofe 17, pay for it, and so it was really interesting. Another example, we built an automated mediator. We use it for research in psychology about different styles of mediation. Okay, so these where people, a system support people, replace people, and also train people. In train people, we are using an autonomous agent that is good in interacting with people to have role playing. So, for example, if a person would like to get ready to an interview, mainly discussing salary and other issues of hiring, so we have a system that one can train in a chat, in a flexible chat, where the system can either play the role of the employer or the role of the employee, and they can negotiate various things. You can try it if you wish. And actually, we ran it in the US, even in Egypt. This project led to another project about training young law officers in the Israeli police in interviewing, and we built an automated agent that can play the role of the suspect, and the young officer can ask him questions. He can do it anywhere, and this is really helpful, because doing really training of interaction is quite costly if you need to hire a person that will play the role, and not always that well, of the suspect or the witness. This led to a much, much larger project that called Law Trend, that was supported by Horizon 2020, about how to train a team of international law enforcement personnel in working together in investigation and interviewing people. So I gave you a few examples. I have many more that we did over the years. And the question is, what is common to all these systems that interact proficiently with people? And the idea is that if an autonomous agent, intelligent agent, needs to interact with a person, it must try to predict the user's, the human behavior. For example, if I'm doing negotiation, I need to predict, if I'll give you an offer, whether you will accept the offer or not. If I'm playing the role of a suspect, I'm interested what will be the suspect next answers when it will get an... If I'm trying to give an argument to my son, I need to figure out how will he answer to the... If I'm giving the person an advice about the car temperature, I need to know how he will feel, what his preferences. And when the passenger in a car tell to the autonomous car, drive more carefully, I need to predict what does it mean. So, well, everybody heard about machine learning, and it does miracles these days, sort of. The problem is that predicting humans' decision-making is extremely difficult. Why? Because people decision-making, I always say it's very strange, And people are upsetting me. Why? Because they are ruining my experiments. You can never know what they will do in the experiment. But seriously, people are sensitive to context. They lack knowledge of their own preferences. They are affected by complexity. They have interplay between emotion and cognition. And they have problem of self-control. And, if you take the same person, me, I know, for example, we are playing a game. I know the rules, I know the game, and in 2 times, quite similar, I will make different decisions. So how can I predict how the system can predict what I will do when I'm changing my mind? So that is a big challenge. And to address this challenge, we are using first data. And using data, and then we are using machine learning, which is an algorithm that can learn functions from data. And then we're using the result of it in our optimization problem in order to decide what the agent will do. And sometimes we have all sorts of virtual something, and people are very happy to interact with them. So I would like to, we'll see how times permit, but I would like to present one or two systems or agents that we developed to give you some notion of what we are doing. And, one of the things today is that there are UAVs, drones, and they are, if you look at them, they are autonomous. But still, if you are looking at UAV, usually there is two people and one expensive UAV. And, if you are looking at robots, usually, even the robots are autonomous. Usually there is one person on one robot. But, there are many drones, and why will I have one person interact with only one? I would like one person. But actually, I am wondering, why do we need people at all? I have this autonomous cars, small robots that are looking for dangerous things. They are looking for these green balls in my lab. You see they are autonomous, they are moving around, and they are, they don't need, that's what the person can see if he's looking. And why do we need the person at all in such a things, or with drones? They are autonomous. So the reason is, we have three reasons why we still want a person in the loop. One, these robots cost $1,500, and they have their limitations. So one thing, they are break from time to time, and then we need the person to help them overcome their difficulties. Another thing is that some things robots do better. Some things, some tasks, humans do better. And I'll give you an example. These robots can move around, and then, in my lab, the most problematic case is they are getting, if I may say, to the ladies' room, and then they are getting something like this, and going out, they can do it, but it will take them a lot of time. On the other hand, if the operator, not me, I'm not that good in driving a robot, but my colleagues or my students, they can do like this, and the robot is out. So there are things people do better than robots, and that's why I want a person to be involved. And the third thing that has to do with this community is that my customers, the customers of the robots, in a lot of cases, want the person to make some of the decisions. If it's medical applications, they want the doctor to make the final decision. And if we are talking about less nice application like shooting, they don't want robots to autonomously shoot somebody. I don't want anybody to shoot somebody, but nevertheless, they want the people to stay involved in some of the decision. So we have this, another example is in storage, small storage. We have a person that is packing, Black Friday, so there are a lot of packing, and the robots are bringing him or her the things, and there is again interaction, one person with a lot of robots. It's very difficult. So why is it difficult? So think about this poor lady that needs, she's smiling. That's just for the picture. She needs to pack. She needs to magic the robots. The robots are calling her. She's packing. Usually one person on many robots, the person is overwhelmed. Even the robots are semi-autonomous. Never mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 robots, and that's it. So we were thinking what we can do in order to have a good team of robots and a person, and that they will work together. And our idea was, let's add something additional. Let's add an agent, an intelligent system that will help the robots and the person work together. So what do you need in order that the agent will be able to work this complex setting? So, okay, what do we need to do? We need first to build a model of the person and the environment. For that, we are collecting data, a lot of data, and trying to predict how the robots will perform and how the human will perform. Collecting data on robots is very easy. Collecting data on humans is more difficult, but we did it. And then using these models, the agent can give advice both to the person, what to do next. I'll give you an example. So the person is now teleoperating one of the robots to put it somewhere. And now another robot is calling and said, oh, I found a green ball. Should he stop doing that and going to see what this ball is all about? So the agent should advise him what he should do. And he should give him task from the robot and so on and so forth. So
the agent is human or
no, I'm not developing humans. I'm just developing intelligent systems. And when I'm saying an agent, I'm talking about intelligent system, computer system, running on a computer and helping. So the human is this guy who is trying to teleoperate these robots. And you see it's really messing place, and the robots needs a lot of attention, a lot of helps, and they can get the help from the person, just the person becoming overwhelmed. So he doesn't know what to do. So the agent helps him decide what to do, when to do, and also it helps the robots deciding what to do and helps them work better together. So this is the idea. We have a team of robots, human, it could be humans, but here we had only one person, and we have an intelligent computer system that are helping everybody. So this is an example of everybody working together to satisfy one very important task, finding green balls, but. Okay, so the question is, does it work? Is the agent helpful? I'm spending all my time on these agents, and I like to have a really well-defined experiments to figure out if it's helpful. So one of the problems for us computer scientists when we run experiments like this, we need to bring people to the lab and try them. The students that came, they play the role of the teleoperator, helping the robot finding green balls. And so they came to the lab and we had also in simulation, but let's talk about the real things. And the robot had to find the green ball and the person should help them. And we brought them twice to the lab. Each person came twice to the lab. One, he and the robot worked together to finding green ball. And once, when there was additional agent helping them. And we were nice. Half of the people were without the agent first and second, etc. We did the experiment well, and what did we find? So when there was agents and a human without the person and robots without the agent, they found on average 7 green balls. However, in the same time, when the agent helped the team, they were able to find on average 14 green balls in the same time. Now forget the average and the statistical significant result. You can come and try and see by yourself all the people that got help from the agent did better than the ones that didn't get help. And you can come and see it's really, really helpful. So my student really likes the project, and they did a video explaining this better than me. The only question if we'll have the... Can you... okay.
Dispatch,
Quick! There's a student missing in the northern section of the campus.
give me the exact
Wait,
location.
wait, wait. How do...
The
Just a
unit is on
moment.
its way.
Should we try again? Is it not working? שאני אחרי צריכה לשנות. No. Can you hear it? Okay, let's start from the beginning. And okay.
Dispatch,
Quick! There's a student missing in the northern section of the campus.
give me the exact location. A unit is on its way.
In disaster environments, both the victims and the rescuers' lives may be in danger. Robot technology can provide solutions. Today's robots are semi-autonomous and require a human operator's help whenever they cannot handle the situation on their own.
Move Agent 3 away from Agent 4. Move Agent 4 away from Agent 5. Manually drive Robot 6 to a better...
The fast-paced, simultaneous streams of data from multiple robots can be overwhelming and can be a grueling task for a single operator.
Your robots are too close together. Spread them around. Your robots are too close together. Spread them around. Manually drive Robot 6 to a better position. Move Agent 3 away from Agent 4.
Here in Bar-Ilan University, we have developed an intelligent agent that supports the human multi-robot team collaboration. The agent prioritizes the different tasks, filters the robot's signals, and generates warnings which enhance the operator's situation awareness, thereby allowing him to make better decisions. The agent uses a novel methodology combining machine learning and optimization techniques, which accounts for both the operator's abilities and the robot's performance in real time. Through extensive empirical evaluations, we have shown that our agent was able to significantly enhance the team's performance, which can translate into saving lives.
There he is. We found him. We got him. I'm sending you the exact location now. Dispatch out.
So this video won in HK 2015 award about best video for robots. You can guess why. So let me go through another project very quickly. And that's because we are some lawyers. Lawyers like to provide argument and do a lot of discussions. So can an agent help them in the argumentation? And actually, this project started by Intel. And they said, well, you have non-monotonic reasoning expert. This related to argumentation theory. Why won't you use argumentation theory to build an agent that will whisper in the ear of a person and give him advice for what argument to say next? And I was thinking, I already know from my other work that people are not fully rational. They don't maximize expected utility. But I thought, maybe argumentation people are doing better. People are so good at arguing. So first we try to see if we can see what are the argument people are giving in discussion. And we were trying to use argumentation series that for a mathematician it look like this, like a graph, and it actually says, the wife says, well, let's buy a SUV. And the husband said, well, it's too expensive. Well, it could be the other around. And now the question is, what will be the next argument that the wife will say? And she has the option to say, no, it's not too expensive. It's too expensive because it's high taxes. Well, we'll take a loan. Well, but it's safe, etc. And we analyze, okay, what will she say? What do you think? She can also say, well, taking a loan. If she will say taking a loan, the husband will say, but the interest was high. Well, that was when a few years ago, not now. What the wife will, what the husband will say? Wait, actually, the wife. Well, it turned out that most people said that let's take a loan. However, from the argumentation theory, this is not something you should say. And the only one that you are not supposed to say is let's take a loan, because this can be attacked by another argument. So it turned out that we can't use argumentation theory in order to predict what argument people will say. And we use it with many people, with fictional cases, with transcription of real discussion, with student chat. We couldn't use any theoretical argumentation theory to predict human argument in a discussion. So we said, okay, let's use machine learning. We'll collect data and we'll try to predict humans' next argument. And in order to do this, we also consult experts about argumentation theory, also about psychology, etc. And we came up with a set of features and build to my surprise. I'm always surprised when we are successful in predicting human decision making. And we were able to predict with accuracy of 77% in Israel computer science student and 72% accuracy in the US. And actually it's turned out that the models of the people in the US and the computer scientists in Israel are quite the same. And you can use one model to predict the other and vice versa. Also very surprising. Okay, so now I have a good predictor. But doing prediction is just the first step when I am built-in agent. Now the question is, what should the argument I will whisper in the ear of the user? It's not me, it's my intelligent agent. What should he choose? How should he suggest? Should he suggest the one that is predicted, or something that is good according to the theory, or something that will benefit the user, or, what advice should he get? But the criteria for a good advice here, that the user, the one that is doing the argument, will use the advice. That's why I have an agent. Otherwise, why should I give an advice? So, I was thinking that the best, personally, when I was looking at it, I was thinking the best agent to build is one that will give arguments that the person will not think about. So I will try to predict what the person will say next. And instead of saying this prediction, I will say something that he wouldn't think. Otherwise, why one wants to get an advice? Well, that's what I was thinking, and I was wrong. So, why I was wrong? I don't know. I don't understand in people, but I know to build an agent. We build many agents. One that gave advice, what argument to say next according to the prediction. So he predicted what the person will say next, the one that is going to say the argument, and gave him this advice. Then he looked at relevance. What are arguments relevant? That weakly related. Then prediction plus relevant, argumentation theory, didn't give any advice, and random. We have 204 people participate in the experiments and all these agents. And it turns out that the best one, first, the worst one was the one that I liked most, that was weakly related, something that is new and not, no, people didn't like this advice. The one that they most liked, it one that gave a prediction, what they were expected to say anyway, and that was relevant to the current discussion. And also they were satisfied more with this agent. So they used the prediction and relevant advice most, and they also we asked them after the discussion, something you can count. We count how many times they got an advice and they used it in the discussion, and then we asked them if they were satisfied. In both cases, the ones that they liked most was the ones with the prediction and the relevance. That first saying that I really don't understand in people, but this is a challenge. The challenge is to try to predict what people are going to do, what their decision making, and then use it in developing agents that will be useful to people. And if we are talking about, if we'll summarize, then we discussed agent. And agent is intelligent computer system that can replace people, they can train people, they can support people, and they can work together with robots, but also can be online intelligent systems that support humans, replace them, or train them. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I was not sure exactly what you, Professor Kraus, was going to talk about, and I figured that I would talk about or try to expand our political imagination a bit further, because there are so many questions, so many interesting questions about any aspect, perhaps, of AI. You have the trolley problem, and the cultural or gender biases of face recognition systems. But here I thought I saw the word agent, and I figured I'd talk a little bit about digital agents. Or maybe I would ask the question whether digital agents should adopt a code of ethics. And I want to talk about a code of ethics and not about regulation, because regulation takes its own risks with it. And perhaps we need to start by thinking a little bit about ethics, about stuff that is not that binding, maybe. So what's so special about digital agents? So we're at a momentous inflection point of human-machine interaction, because smart speakers are being adopted faster than smartphones. If you take a look at this Cyber Monday, which is happening today, I don't know. And voice interfaces are becoming mainstream. And I think we need to stop for a second and talk about this precise phenomena. Maybe it is that for the first time, instead of us learning the machine's language, the machine learns our language. And I'm talking from the point of view of the end user. And maybe it's the fact that users don't merely enjoy the ease of commanding a machine using their voice, they also enjoy the company of a quirky assistant that tells corny dad jokes sometimes. So our machines now say I, and we appreciate their personalities, because when machines talk like humans, people can't help but presume a personal relationship. So this is actually, I think, what is so special about the digital assistants. And I want to talk here about 3 dimensions, which are well known in the field of ethics of machines, but to give it this interesting angle. And I'm going to do that by referring to the maybe front end or back end, maybe something which has to do more with deeper aspects and more shallow aspects. And we're talking about transparency, bias, and privacy. And again, I'm not going to offer here any answers or any precise answers. I think we just need to start talking about those issues. So let's start with biases. AI creators and developers are all men. And in the West, they have been white men. This is Francesca Rossi, IBM's global leader of AI ethics, said in a talk a couple of months ago. The stories used to program AI are created by men. It's a vicious circle between AI development and deployment. And I find this kind of funny to say after such an amazing presentation given by a woman. But we need to take, I think, a look at the bigger picture. Also, intelligent machines can fail in ways that are different from human error patterns, ways we do not expect or are prepared for, and that call for holding on ever tighter to human values and ethics. And I think one of the basic and common ethical rules of AI application is that AI must not increase any bias that already exists in our system. The thing is that predictive algorithms generalize to make predictions, which strengthens the pattern. I think that the people in this room are quite familiar with the literature about AI biases. But the twist here, when we talk about digital agents, is I think not in the deeper sense of algorithmic biases, but in a different bias, the one of the front end. Because the personality of a machine has become a serious and smart business for so many big companies. Gadget with human traits spur our curiosity, leading us to ask for more of them, which then drives adoption. So far, voice interfaces have been focused on universal appeal. Think about Siri, think about Cortana or Alexa. And indeed, there's a proven formula to accomplish that. First, the voice should be female. Second, the personality has to be subordinate. Third, the personality should be maybe extroverted. And finally, a good dose of flattery goes a long way to being liked. In the big players, so the big players have deployed exactly that playbook to drive adoption of voice assistants. A silicon sycophant with jokes and a silky voice. Think about all the digital assistants. All voice assistants encourage only one relationship dynamic, the servile companion. Always there for you, empathetic, cheerful, like a friend, but equally ready at all times to take orders and carrying out tasks like a servant. It is no accident that the personality of the servile companion is enacted by a female voice. Society is intimately familiar with women as casual servants in the roles of secretaries, housewives, and mothers. Well, we're basically training our kids that they can bark commands at a female and she will respond. Think about it. Isn't this just reinforcing a stereotype that women have been fighting for over a century? So true to the iterative design methodology, the leaders in voice interfaces are evolving their artificial personalities rapidly to counteract the backlash. Alexa, for instance, won't answer to bigotry anymore. Siri, Google Assistant, and Bixby can all be altered between male and female voices today. Echo and Bixby allow users to change the command work that wakes them up, allowing users to change assistant's persona and gender. But the ethical question, I think, remains. So that has to do with bias. Now let's move to the other path, which is privacy. When we talk about privacy, I think the main thing that comes to mind is kind of a GDPR-ish a perception of privacy, which is my control over my personal data. And obviously this is a privacy necessity, and we need to make sure that data that is collected by our smart devices, it could be Amazon Echo, it could be Google Home, it could be smart TVs, this data even I would say even seemingly innocent house cleaning robots, create maps that could potentially be sold, right? So, but this is, I would say, the classic privacy question. But I think we want to give another look at what I call the autonomy traps that those digital assistants might create, because those assistants, as you described quite well in the theoretical level, they're designed to abstract even further away from pages of links towards synthesizing information on our behalf. Microsoft Cortana, for instance, its marketing material touts that it gets to know you by learning your interests over time. She looks out for you, providing proactive, useful recommendations, stores your interests, friends, and favorite routines, continually learning about your world. You can understand that Google's now is more or less the same thing. Siri as well, and also Facebook when it announced its personal digital assistant M. So if we return to this digital assistant, those assistants are actually starting to make decisions for us in much the same way as those driverless cars or other agents. Imagine for a moment the digital assistant that processes a note from our doctor, warning us about the results of our latest medical checkup and that we need to lose weight and stay away from certain foods. You were talking about convincing people to consume healthy bars and not cakes. At the same time, the assistant sees from our connected health devices that we are not exercising much anymore, and that we've been consuming a lot of junk food lately and actually gained 3 pounds last week and 2 pounds already this week. Now it is quitting time on Friday afternoon, and the assistant knows that every Friday night we stop by our local store for a 12-pack of donuts on the way home. What should the assistant do? Should our digital assistant politely suggest we skip the donut this week? Should it warn us in graphic detail, like cigarettes, about the health complications we will likely face down on the road if we buy those donuts tonight? Should it go as far as to threaten to lock us out of our favorite mobile game or on our phone, or withhold our email or some other features for the next few days as punishment if we buy those donuts? Should it quietly send a note to the doctor telling her we bought donuts and asking for advice? Or should it go as far as to instruct the credit card company to decline the transaction to stop us from buying the donuts? While such a scenario is still in the future, hospitals and health insurers are already beginning to incorporate lifestyle data, such as what we buy at the grocery store, or letting our gym membership lapse, into the risk models. At the same time, today's internet is paid for by advertisers that want us to buy their products. What happens if a company powering our digital assistant has among its major advertiser clients both our as its major advertising clients, both our health insurance company and our local donut store? That could be quite a problem. Come from Friday night when we start heading for the donut store, should it listen to our doctor and steer us clear of those donuts, or should it help us fulfill our desires and the wishes of the donut advertiser and help us buy those donuts? Should it risk offending us by pushing us away from a bad decision, or should it help us fulfill our every immediate desire without regard to future consequences? So the influence of a personal assistant is going to be, I think, doubled. First of all, it's the autonomy trap. But secondly, it's the interpersonal relationship, because we are not talking to a machine. We're talking to someone who knows every single detail about our lives. And with that, I want to get back to another aspect of privacy, the one which actually deals with classical privacy, the right to be left alone. One of the major problems in current internet behaviors is the fact that people feel that when they talk to a machine or they act in front of a machine, they can do whatever they want. It is called the online disinhibition effect. But when we talk about a very, very human interface of a digital or a personal assistant, this is going to change because people are going to feel people are going to feel that their relationship with the machine is personal again, which is going to decline the online disinhibition effect, but it is going to create stress, and it is going to create a feeling that we are never being left alone, that we share with some other person our most intimate moments in life. And this is something that you can't deal with via anonymization or personal control over your data. This is a very inner psychological feeling. Okay, so this has to do with privacy, both in the front end and in the back end. The last thing I wanted to talk about was transparency. The back end of transparency is something that I don't want to talk about now because my brother is going to talk about it this noon. And the RSS model of Shwartz, Shalev, and Shashua is a very interesting one in terms of trying to explain and even regulatory enforce explanation of how machine learning processes are actually working. The point that I want to make, however, is that the new virtual assistant, for instance, what we are calling the Google Duplex, its role is to conduct phone calls on behalf of the users, right? Making appointments like hair salon appointments or movie or restaurant appointments and so on. So Duplex is the culmination of a lot of Google's work on machine learning and natural language processing technology. In other words, it sounds and come across like a real person. Google Assistant making calls pretending to be human, not only without disclosing that it's a bot, but adding the and ash to deceive the human on the other hand. On the other end, should the room be cheering it? I think it's a question. Google finally responded a couple of weeks ago by saying it was designing this feature with disclosure built in, and it will make sure the system is appropriately identified. What we showed at this with Duplex at Google was an early technology demo. It's good, I think, that Google is listening, but deeply concerning that it didn't think to demonstrate its human-friendly tweaks along with its technical advances. Because human ethics, not just human simulation, needs to be baked into these systems from the start, not as a reactive afterthought. Maybe we should advocate in this sense for the use of robotic or maybe cartoony tones of those systems so that we won't think of them as human. A last point I wanted to make, which is something that we've been working on at the Israel Democracy Institute lately. The problem is, I think, that all those personal assistants are being used with all the examples that I gave in order to make us buy services or consume products. What happens when the leapfrog is going to be made and those systems are going to be used in order to convince us with ideas or with democratic elections? What we've seen with the Cambridge Analytica case was exactly this this step forward, using the same systems that were used before to convince us to buy products in order to make us either vote or not vote, or vote for someone, or even influence our confidence and trust in democratic institutes generally. We're not talking about products and services anymore. We're talking about electioneering. We're talking about AI systems, and this is the Cambridge Analytica system, obviously, that can track the most vulnerable people, that can focus them in a psychographic way with claims that are relevant exactly to their own fears. what is the length between those very advanced systems that were presented just here and something that can be used in order to influence public opinion? Moreover, how should algorithms handle political value decision? Should a personal assistant of someone living, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, who expresses interest in anti-government protest movements, discourage further interest in the topic? Should the assistant of someone living in Thailand censor the person's communication to edit out criticism of government officials to protect the person from reprisals? Should any assistant that determines its user in the press try to cheer that person up by masking negative news and deluging him with the most positive news it can find to try to improve his emotional state? What happens when those decisions are complicated by the desires of advertisers that pay for a particular outcome, or political campaigns, or the Russian government? So I think there is no reason to assume that this leapfrog is not going to happen, and this is again something that we need to think about. So let's get back to the ethics. As we are designing systems, we're designing society. Ethical rules that we choose to put in the design impact society. A couple of weeks ago, Microsoft has released a set of guidelines to help developers build responsible digital assistants. Very opaque, I have to tell you, and general ones, but it's worth taking a moment to look at the press release given by Lily Cheng, Microsoft Corporate Vice President of Conversational AI. In general, said Ms. Cheng, the guidelines emphasize the development of conversational AI that is responsible and trustworthy from the very beginning of the design process. We encourage companies and organizations to stop and think about how their bot will be used and take the steps necessary to prevent abuse. At the end of the day, the guidelines are all about trust, because if people don't trust the technology, they aren't going to use it. And here we have two very important points. One of them is actually preventing abuse or misuse of technology. The other one is to make people adopt technology. And when we think about ethics, I think the question that should be raised is, are these the reasons to adopt ethical rules? Maybe the second one is a motivation, but it's certainly not a reason. It's like adopting ethical rules in order to avoid regulation. The question is whether abuse of technology would be a good enough of a reason, or we need to think about it a little bit further. So yes, we can design a universally inoffensive personality. The question is whether we should. We should design strong personalities that respect the human need for superiority, maybe, but taking into account equality, autonomy, as well as intimacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarit and Tehilla. We have about 25 minutes, which is good time, so we can open discussion and take some questions from the floor about the two wonderful presentations that we have heard. Yes, Nimrod.
I'm Sarit. I want to refer to the first experiment, the first project you presented, and the way I understood it, it's basically the notion of introducing hierarchical levels into the management of robot system, right? Because you've added the agent you've added is like management between the person who makes the decisions and the robots on the ground in that sense.
I see it differently. I see it as a team, okay?
Right.
Because everybody is doing what he is best. So he's observing what the robot is doing, he's getting information from the robot, he's moving information to the person. I don't see it as hierarchy. Similarly, I don't see the human as just because the robots are semi-autonomous, so
Right.
sometimes the human helps the robots, is not telling them what to do. So I see it more as a team.
Right, I just wanted to ask, using the team model, you can scale this up, and I'm just wondering if you see any limitations on the ability of those agents. You know, they should be, I guess, at least more sophisticated than the robots on the ground. So if you want to scale up the system, you know, and add more layers, is that something that
It's possible.
is just, you know, endless in that sense, or is that some kind of technological limitation on how good you can do that?
It's not you know, it's need to be what is your task, what will be better, to have hierarchy of decision makers, or to have a distributed decision making. There are algorithms for this and that, and it depends on the context.
Can I follow up on this? It looked from I think the film was quite effective because, of course, the humans seemed like probably the dispensable part of the team, bordering on tokenism, that we need a human in the team so it will still look like a team. And I'm wondering, in terms of technology, you talked about, okay, these are semi-autonomous robots, but I mean, how long will the humans be around in these teams, and whether they're helping the team, or I mean, at what point will we reach the conclusion that they're not helpful to the team, but they're actually slowing down the team?
Well, I'm not a futurist, so I can't say about the future. But it depends on the task and what we are doing. And there are some things that we are losing, like navigating. People are not good anymore. You know, that was in 10 years. So it's hard to talk about the future. But, okay, so these were systems, semi-autonomous. They were just looking for green balls. You know, it wasn't that smart robots, I'm telling you. But, you know, if I want now, my dream, okay, is that there will be robots in the homes and will help, you know, elderly or people with some difficulties will help in the home. They can't do it today. However, I can think about a team of teleoperators, sometimes teleoperating the robot in the home, sometimes the robots are doing things by themselves, sometimes even if the physical, today the robots can't do all the physical activities, like, well, even pouring coffee, you know, maybe it can, but it will improve. But then maybe the robot will do something, and then the person will talk with the elderly via the robot, because when the robot will see that the elderly is bored or something, instead of having some stupid, I might say, a virtual human that will talk to him, why you can have a human that will get, because we are, so that's how I see it. So they keep on having tasks that people are better or will be better, and that's what I think working together.
Okay. Yes.
A technical question. Do you focus on particular AI methods in your research? It looked like there was some mix of reinforcement learning, NLP, classification techniques.
I think the solution for intelligent system is to integrate. And you could see here, we had optimization problem, we had game theory, for example, with the agent that supports the team, and we have machine learning. In the argumentation theory, we had argumentation agent, we have argumentation theory, we had machine learning, we had so what I'm saying, I don't think that to get, but this is my opinion, I don't think in order to get an intelligent system, you can have only one technique. I think you can you must integrate. So if we are talking about the giving advice to the police today where to locate cruisers in order to prevent car accident, you need to have a prediction. You have a very difficult optimization problem, and you have, maybe you need to take humans decision making into, you know, they want to go to lunch, and so you need to use, and here you need maybe argumentation, maybe you need game theory. So that's what I think.
Okay. Can I pose a question to both of you? I think there was one common element in both of your presentations, and that was this interplay between what people actually want and what may be good for them. Because your hypothesis, Sarit, was that you actually want the assistant to give you the advice you didn't think about, the unpredictable advice. And actually people didn't want that. They actually wanted the predictable advice. Maybe confirmation bias, maybe there could be other psychological systems in place. And then for you, Tehilla, I mean, the people want the Alexa, they buy the Alexa or the Siri because this is what, I mean, this is what they actually want to hear. I mean, these products are being developed in order to accommodate preferences, which of course are biased in themselves. So your approach was, Sarit, was we go with client satisfaction, even though this is not the optimal use of the machine. But you, Tehilla, took the other view and says, no, we have to, in a way, push back against preferences and go with the, so to speak, ethical standard, which is how we want decisions to be rendered. Now, I know that you're not working on the normative plane, but I thought that this was interesting that the person coming from science is going with the free will, and the person coming from a more normative context is going with well, maybe also normative, also a normative sensibility, but less perhaps differential to free will. So maybe you want to say something about this. Maybe Tehilla, you can start.
Sure. So I think the question is the question of the motive of the person who actually supplies the systems, not the person who consumes them. And once we see enormous and gigantic companies using those machines or those personal agents to help us maximize our preferences in the short term, but might be wrong, I would say, from a more general social level, then we have a problem. And for me, I think the change of my mindset was Cambridge Analytica, not because I did not work on privacy issues before that, but because I realized that what we were thinking about privacy in terms of having our autonomous control over our decisions, controlling our data uses, and so on and so forth, is just one part of the issue. The other part is what if those systems are going to be used, and I'm not talking about foreign countries like the Russians. I'm talking about local political campaigns, or people who want to win, or people who want to influence public opinion. And then all of a sudden I say to myself, we have this presumption that we live in a democracy. What is so democratic about such a system? And again, I think that the difference between the personal and the collective here would be very meaningful.
So if you want to...
Yeah, I don't know. What I'm saying, I'm coming from the technical point of view. I can predict what people will do. I can develop decision making but there is a human, eventually, there is a human that needs to tell the agent what to maximize. And whether, you can tell him to learn what to maximize, but he needs to tell him what to do. Eventually, there is a user. And either the user is the one that uses the system, or the user is the one that builds the system. But somebody needs to tell the agent. And that, I think, is very important. Computers don't have goals that comes out of the air. Somebody needs to give them what to maximize. I prefer if someone gives them a function. I like functions. A function that gets a vector and say what is good and what is not good. But it's up to you to decide what will be the goals of the agent. We are just getting a way for the agent to get goals, to get functions, and to act accordingly, as optimally as the person tells them what they want to maximize.
Yes, please.
I have a question for Tehilla. I love the ethical framework. I think it's super important. And maybe just to kind of counter what you just said, absolutely we have systems that are being built on the technological aspects and we are giving them the rules. But I think what Tehilla is trying to say is that there is a misconception of control, of human control, but it is lost in the process, especially when it's scaling. But specifically, I want to ask, or maybe to add like another component to this ethical framework, because it seems like you're talking a lot about protection from these systems, but maybe we should also talk about protection by these systems. Specifically in terms of reporting duties, so we hear a lot in the States now about the use of information recorded from the systems in criminal cases. Should we start also thinking about reporting duties in cases of, for example, life-threatening situations, domestic violence, suicide? I think it's a huge question to also add to that, obviously under privacy, but also just like social goals and normative approach.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think once people started to realize, for instance, that Facebook could foresee suicidal thoughts, not suicidal actions, this question I think was first brought to the table, in the sense that I think the interesting point here is not whether the system should report, but whether the state should see something like this as part of a privacy realm, or part of the what we call national security issues, right? Because a personal security sometimes might be considered as national security. Here in Israel, everything becomes national security eventually. But I think this is an excellent point, and what I try to emphasize in my
donut example.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
With the example was the question whether you should actually go and tell your doctor. I'm not even talking about state authorities. I'm talking about your doctor. So these all are hard questions. I thought at the beginning, though, you meant something a little bit different, which was could actually a few digital assistants can create some kind of a consumer group in order to achieve, let's say, better prices on Amazon, or maybe negotiate better with the doctor, or do something like that. That could also happen. But what I was trying to point was actually the autonomy track issue, and then your point is actually really helpful.
Okay, yes.
I want to talk about the problem. Some people claim that we should have ethics program ethics into agents, and this is a big problem, because ethics is not something universal. Ethics depends on the domain, on the field that you are dealing with. Ethics of media is different than ethics of medicine, for instance. It depends on the problem. I argue that it also depends on the algorithms and on the data itself. So we will end up with hundreds or thousands or millions codes of ethics for each agent. The other thing that bothers me, that it can be also something that companies will use to reduce their responsibility. They will say, okay, the agent works according to certain code of ethics, we are not so much responsible. Okay, so...
Let's pick a few and then we can respond, but we are running out of time. No.
Yes, that's actually nicely follows on from the previous question, because I've been wondering, there's this constant tension that we see, particularly in recent years, over whether ethics and ethical questions should be playing a role in the programming and development of some of these technologies, and I'm wondering whether, specifically with regard to AI, machine learning, and related technologies, has there been some kind of qualitative step change in terms of what we now expect? So if you look at sort of other technologies in the past, there's someone developing just the most basic, even if it's sort of keeping it similar, so someone developing the most basic processor, chip for a computer. We didn't get into too many debates, so the people working on that also think about the ethical aspects, right? There were other people that could think about afterwards how it's used, but we weren't too worried about the ethics at the initial stage of the scientists working on it. Is there something fundamentally different about AI that requires us to start embedding ethical thinking into the development because of its implications for autonomy, for human decision making? And is this perhaps almost a shift change in the relationship between science and ethics through this technology?
Yes, please.
So just like a quick pointer, I guess, question, sort of like grouping together both of your points about, I guess, paternalism and free will and what you were saying before about how interesting it was that the different approaches took place. So I was thinking that it really depends on the circumstances. So in most situations where the consumer wants to hear what they want to hear, maybe it makes sense to sort of offer the more obvious prediction. But there are certain situations, certainly, for example, cases where there's a lot like at stake or it's like bigger, more critical or security related, different types of decision making processes in there, you would definitely want to sort of force the user to kind of get those like remotely related but somehow still relevant concepts which you otherwise might not necessarily want to push or offer, because there's more like in those situations online, and then you might want to adopt some of that paternalistic mindset and kind of try to add those like other alternatives and other thoughts just because there's more to it than that, and it's less of a traditional or like a normal day-to-day type of a usage. So maybe, we can even almost use like, algorithms to sort of determine which situations require, a higher level of input and kind of, force more into the discussion based on types of situations as you recognize them. Just sort of like get that on point.
With respect to timing of ethics, I'd like to raise a point where every time you see a lecture on autonomous vehicles, the first slide is about the trolley question. Now, considering that 1.25 million people every year are dying in car crashes, just to illustrate it, every 4 minutes in India someone is dying from a car crash, and 100 people a day in the United States are dying from car crashes. Why shouldn't the first slide be, how do we save 900,000 lives a year? And then afterwards start worrying about the trolley question. What's happening now is, every time you put up that slide of the trolley dilemma, I think it's slowing the pace of saving those 900,000 lives.
That's interesting. I was in India last week, and I can relate I can understand why the numbers are as you indicated. We'll take one more, and then we go.
Sure. Thank you for both presentations. That's really fascinating stuff, and it made me think a little bit about what I noticed in my daily interactions with this machine that I have on my lap. So, namely, I'm very fond of Gmail. I know Google sees for maybe not very rational reasons, but it's very convenient. So, and I noticed that Gmail has recently introduced this new tool where the responses would be pre-typed. A variety of options would be presented when I want to respond to an email, right? And so this is exactly this kind of hyper nudging or paternalism that we're discussing. And I was wondering if this is something that computer scientists or designers of these systems are thinking about, because I've noticed from my daily practice that this really flattens the interaction between users. So I'd say that this may have some profound consequences for the robustness or diversity of social interaction.
Okay, thank you. So Sarit, do you want to address any of these issues?
No, I just say that eventually it's people. They are eventually making the decisions. They are building the agents that are flattening and people need to make a decision and decide what they want their system. They're selling, they are buying, I think. And I was thinking about all the things that relevant, like the tobacco industry that misled people for many years, and so it's eventually, we are just developing technology, and it's for you all to get the decision of what the agent needs to do, because I don't think that we are, as a computer scientist, has better capabilities to make these decisions. We can develop good systems, and the use of them, it's the buyer, the seller, the person so I don't think that there was a change in that. There was technology of shooting people, there are atoms, the tobacco. They are improving now, by the way, how to deceive our kids of using tobacco, electrical. So it's eventually people decision making. That's how I see it.
But Sarit, would you accept that this discourse does have implications, for instance, on the transparency of what you do, so that people are able to trace back the decisions that were made in the programming stage?
I think if today it could be more transparent because everything is logged in. You can see what people were doing, etc. So this actually, I think, is a good point. What you will do with it, we just provide. I think that's how I see it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what she's saying because it gives me ideas, but as a personal person, not as a
computer scientist.
Computer scientist.
So,
okay, first of all, thank you for the support. Because it makes me feel that we, public policy and lawyers, still have some, space in this life. I beg to differ, though, in the sense that technology progress is neutral, or is something that doesn't have to do with values, or even like giving money for further scientific advancement has to do with politics. Not to say, for instance, the data that you're using as a substance for scientific progress, which might be biased, and then all of a sudden we continue with current social biases. So in this sense, when we talk about privacy by design or machine learning by design, all those notions which come from the public policy realm, I think are very relevant even to the scientific progress as for itself. I find it insufficient to say we are just going to create a machine and you can do whatever you want with it. I don't think it has ever worked in the history, and it's not going to work this time, especially when we saw during the past 20 years this, let's say, parallel revolution of connectivity that is being, I think, moved to directions that were not, I would say, meant at the beginning. I wanted to say something about the trolley. The reason I used the trolley slide was to say I'm bored of the trolley slide.
Thank you.
But I think there are other ethical issues that needs to be addressed. You asked about the what's so special about AI in the sense of ethics, and I think we can answer this by, first of all, it's the relationship of man and machine. That was not the issue in the connectivity or the previous internet revolution. As I said before, what was, I think, one of the main characteristics of the internet revolution was the online disinhibition effect. The fact that people felt that they were communicating with a machine, and that's why they allowed themselves to do things that they wouldn't do in an interpersonal interaction. Here, what I try to show with the personal assistants is a totally different set of relationship. The other thing, which is not totally true, but true at least partially, is the ability of AI system to create damage in the real world. Unlike, let's say, cyber attacks and stuff like that, which usually remains in the online sphere. I'm not talking about critical infrastructure and stuff like that, but I think there's a point at this one as well. And you asked about ethical rules. I think that it is running from responsibility, or trying to take off the burden of responsibility to start describing a world where there are going to be hundreds of codes of ethics. True, ethics is something that has to do with a society, with a specific society inside a specific timing in history, and yet there are certain things that we can talk about as common values of civilized democracies or civilized countries. What I mentioned, for instance, with the gender bias of personal assistance creation, the fact that we teach our kids to give orders to a woman voice. This is something that I don't think would be that different between, let's say, Israel and America, in a sense. you've mentioned before, you've also mentioned the fact that people use ethics in order to try to avoid regulation. True, this is right. It has been like that in media ethics versus media regulation in the past. But I think that if there's good enough of a motive, then it's good to have ethics. You know, I mean, if the companies are actually going to be abided, I don't have any problem with that. Without having all the risks and the problems of regulation.
Okay, thank you very much. So now actually conference time and Jerusalem time are aligned, and it's 11, and that's exactly the time when we have to end and leave for a 15-minute coffee break. I want to thank very much our two speakers.